Really?
Yeah, Stuart Davis, yeah.
Was that who I mean, though? The artist?
Oh, Andy Berman.
That's who I'm talking about.
Andy Berman with the long hair.
Right about
Manic depressive bipolar.
Okay.
So he's insane. He's outrageous,
Oh,
right?
okay, fair.
And so his book is about bipolar. And he had 9 electroshock therapy treatments, more than anyone in history at that time. And then he didn't want to go to prison, so they sent him to like this asylum. He had 19 electroshock.
I'm connecting.
Okay, there you go.
Like, I think this is my people.
This is your guy. It's pretty cool and interesting.
So cool.
It's outrageous.
Where do you find everybody? You just
everyone,
run into them.
They just all became people I was interested and close with, and then, and just...
And then you're like, let me interview you.
Yeah, I mean, I just...
Kind of like I did you.
100%. You have to you trust your intuition.
Yeah.
You trust your intuition.
I do now. I do
important.
these days. I didn't always. I guess that's a good segue to our interview.
Yeah.
We met at the gym, at Gold's Gym. And
Yes.
I didn't... Do you want me mentioning that, by the way?
Whatever
What
you
gym
want.
you go to? Okay.
Sure,
I don't know. Some people are private.
Everybody loves a Gold's Gym Venice plug. Yeah. Mecca of bodybuilding.
So we met at Gold's Gym, and then I think you posted about some. The event at the Huntley, and then I came to that, and it was amazing. I got to connect with a lot of really cool people, but I didn't realize that that's what you did. Total confession. I just and when you were talking, I knew that it would benefit me to talk to you just because of where I am in my life right now. And I've always been curious about this specific interview that we're about to do, and I just didn't know who to interview about it. And so I've called this episode It Helps Me Feel. And that's because I want to talk to you about what it is about those of us that drink, that when we do, there are things that unlock that we just can't access when we're sober. And I understand that there's a physical response to drinking, and I understand that. I'm talking beyond that, more in the vein of, that book, Body Keeps the Score?
Right.
And that talks about how trauma can be locked in your body, and there's a root that there is... And the body has an ability to keep the score of the traumas in your life. And I mean, you've heard of people talking about having a physical response to a psychological trauma, right? So it's kind of in the vein of that I wanted to interview you about it, because you work on unpacking the subconscious mind. And I haven't introduced you. So this is Sebastian Siegel, a British-American writer, director, producer, actor, and author who works in film, literature, and psychology. And why don't you continue to introduce yourself and tell us what you do?
I look at the invisible forces that drive our lives, right? So whether that's archetypes or in our own subconscious. And I like to storytell, whether it's in couples in psychology, or as a speaker. I did a TEDx talk about it last week. And then you came to the Institute for Neuroinnovation, where I did a talk on consciousness, really, and relationship. The relationship really between the brain and the mind. The mind being the invisible, the interior structure, and the brain being the exterior or measurable structure. And I like to tell that story also in movies.
Yes, I saw Grace and Gray. It was actually so beautiful. It was like a long poetry reading to me. I loved the musical. Well, I love classical music, though, so it would appeal to people like me, I think. But tell me your thought behind that movie.
What do you mean, my thought?
What was the objective? What did you want people to get from that? What I got from it was the emotional journey of loving somebody that's unwell, that's not well, that to be so painfully aware of that there is an end date, and you that was reminded to, in every scene. And I found it a little torturous, to be honest. But I mean, I get.
Thank you.
No, not in a bad way. Listen, but the reason that I've called this It Helps Me Feel is because I have trouble feeling and expressing myself. So it's actually a testament to how well done it is that I was so emotional about it as I was watching it, because I have a hard time accessing my feelings, and I would do that with alcohol a lot.
Thank you for that, and I think your instincts are right on. That, that story, right, is a true story, and that book hit me in a certain way where, on one level, It's a love story between a man and a woman in the 80s in Northern California, and it looks like it's going to end like Titanic, like someone is going to be lost here.
Yep.
And so there's a tragic sense in so much as we identify as an individual with our own loss, and we want to be with the other person, in this case our lover, and we miss that person if they're the one who is dying. And if we're the one who is dying, we also miss life in that way, that we want to stay alive to be with that person and for that person, right? And then there's a transcendent quality, though, to that, which is beautiful, like which at the end of Titanic is similar, like that I really paint in Grace and Grit throughout the whole process, right? And at the end of Titanic, right, it's never let go, Jack, never let go.
Yeah.
And in that, I think the way that that's woven there, in the same way that in Grace and Grit, where I weave it, and as it's written in Treya's journals in the book, in Ken Wilber's book, will you find me on the other side, like in the other life? And he says, look, I promise I'll find you. And so I think what we're looking at there really ultimately is in the same way, like in the Garden of Eden, right, or in Paradise Lost, that it's man can eat from the tree of life, right, but not supposed to eat from the tree of knowledge. That the tree of knowledge, then we're aware now of our own consciousness, and then this introduces good and bad, right?
Yeah.
That this introduces right and wrong, light and dark and evil. In other words, duality. And there is an inevitable pain that comes with that.
Yeah.
And so spectacular it is to know. We must know. We want to eat from the tree of knowledge. We want to know, like, this is amazing. We want to have a framework
what you
on
wish
that.
for, yeah.
But what happens is then we have to carry our consciousness with us.
Yep.
And that's painful, to carry our consciousness
Extremely.
with us, because we're faced then with an ending of this life.
Inevitable ending.
Inevitable. So, but then to stand more in the spot beyond you or deep within that isn't just associated with this life, that lives on, then you're full of hope. So like in the same way in Grace and Grit, when I got to the end of the book, it's devastating. And yet some way it's super hopeful. It's super full of this elation. Like in the credits, you see the real people and the actors, and then Ken Wilber does a voiceover in a story.
Yeah.
And what we're getting at there is to say, to touch love like that is as good as life gets. Because all love, even if the person doesn't die, no matter whether you're drunk or sober, no matter if you're sober today or drunk today, all relationship ends.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. If you're holding hands at the moment of death, you're still separated.
Yeah.
In that moment, you still enter it alone, right? And that is what consciousness is, and that is what awareness is. And a lot of times when we enter into, dovetailing into the thematic, right, for you, and for this show, that is what we're entering. We're trying to avoid that in so many levels. We're trying to get away from that. We want to hold on, grip on to life forever, or grip on to looking the other way and saying, no, I don't want it to end. But the only way around is through.
Yeah. So do you think maybe it's a defense mechanism that we don't access those feelings? And is it helpful, I guess, sometimes to drink, which is not going to be a popular thing for people to hear that are sober, but it was helpful for me at times because it made me feel more human and more accessible and more like the example I gave you of watching the movie and feeling that was very unusual for me. A lot of the times to connect with people or to connect with any situation, even at funerals, of somebody that I love. My trans aunt passed away 12 or 13 years ago now. Loved her very much. Didn't cry at all, but I drank quite a bit. And then I would cry. So there's something that made it safer with alcohol that I don't know. That's I guess what I'm asking. Do you think it tends to hide? Is there a way that alcohol or substance is useful for us to handle the traumas in our lives or access?
It's a great question. And I think that
it's a wide one, huh? I didn't know how to ask it.
No, it's actually very specific.
Is it? Okay, good.
I mean,
Thank God.
The reference point that you used is excellent, right? Because for each individual, it's different. Like someone came into my office the other day and was talking about their experience with ayahuasca. And ayahuasca in and of itself doesn't do a particular thing, but it's a carrier and a catalyst for something to look at life and say, okay, look, what's going on here? Right, and if somebody is really ready for their eyes, he or she, the eyes to be open, then it can be catalytic towards that. But if somebody's really has a trouble holding attention span in anything and is anxious all the time, then it's going to be really unpleasant. Sometimes that unpleasant, it can also be an awakening, but not as not as effective as if somebody's ready to open their eyes,
Right,
right?
okay.
Just really unpleasant, but sometimes that's the direction it's going, and that's okay. In this circumstance, the way you described it, right, that the alcohol allowed this pain and tears to come up, right, to mourn
Without
your
shattering
aunt,
you, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That there's perhaps a block there that you're saying, my God, I've got to be in this world. I've got to hold it together.
Mm-hmm.
I need to take care of this person, that person, myself. I need to keep my
Yeah, I'm
my
great to have in a
vocation
crisis.
going,
yeah.
right? You know, I need to be like I'm the leader here on some
Yes.
level of my life. My sense of identity is that. And then I drink or I have this substance and it says, oh my God, okay, I can let it all go. I can let it flood in, right? And so as a mechanism, right, we don't ideally want to have a mechanism that we need to find that. But if that's the gateway to being able to say, okay, how can I take that state experience, meaning in this case, the purging of the sadness or the catalytic experience of the tears, and say, how can I touch that now without the substance?
Yes.
Right, without the alcohol.
Literally,
how
that's
can I
the
lean
question.
into that,
Yes.
right? And so then that's like saying, okay, and it was interesting because Stan Grof, who's also in my series, right, on YouTube, the eight questions, EIGHT, the 8 question series, he's brilliant, and he was, doing using hallucinogenics and altered states of consciousness with holotropic breath work in people who were in hospice, and trying to touch things like, birth canal experiences and then trans-death experiences.
Okay.
And then he found out after years and years and years of study that holotropic breathwork alone was powerful enough that sometimes the hallucinogenics were also effective, but that the holotropic breathwork alone was enough of a catalyst, if done correctly and if done intensely enough, that it could generate this kind of pharmacy, if you will, right, in the brain and in the body to be able to touch these things, to be able to break through, in other words, right?
Really
so that we have structures, I think, all of us in place all the time, and it's not a question of right, wrong, good, bad, but we want to touch things, and it's like our sense of experience in the world is so kaleidoscopic, right? That it's like this, and just a touch, and it's boom, it goes from green and white to purple and orange, right? Just in 1 second, In terms of funerals, there's a great movie that I think this is depicted really well in, which is the movie Harold and Maude. Right, which popularized Cat Stevens' music. When I was a little kid, it was always on rerun, and I fell in love with that movie. That was where I fell in love with Cat Stevens as well. But there's this young guy, this young boy, and he falls in love with this woman, and she's like 90 or something like this, right? And he's like 20 or something like this. He's a young guy. And he's always wearing black, and he's super into death, and he's always trying to, fake his suicide.
Oh, okay.
And then she's
dark.
Yeah, and they meet at a funeral, and she's like 90, and she's always wearing pink, and like she's always like white and pink umbrellas, and she's always planting trees in the city.
Yeah.
She loves going to funerals, but for her, she sees something else. She sees this recognition of the cycle of life. For him, he sees the end of life, right? And so the stepping out of ourself is this entrance into seeing the cycle of life and not the end of life. So I think, using that as a mechanism then, to take it into the moment, saying like, okay, what is it? Like, okay, I have, like, you look at your hand, right? And you think like, you look at the fingerprints, right? It's pretty amazing. Like, these were meant to build, to touch, to caress. So I've got to trust that I'm derivative of that, right? So in the same way, like I have tear ducts. So those are meant for something, not just clearing the eyes when there's something in the eye, like dust. Those are meant for something. So I want to allow that to come up, right? And saying, okay, and you think about who the person is, right? In this case, it's your aunt, and saying like, what does that person, mean to me? And what is it, who am I experiencing in myself? When I'm with her or him, when I'm with this person. And I want to be more of that person that I miss of me when I was with him or her. And then you start to open up to, that's really what an emotional attachment, is a derivative of, because sometimes it's the person, right, and the biome and the smell, but it's that we like who we are when we're with that person. Right, and so touching onto that can be a good gateway to open up, that emotional sense. In other words, like a man and a woman, oftentimes, or a couple comes into my office, right? There's a split, right? And let's say in this case, the guy, he's like addicted, to the woman, and he's saying like, I just can't stand it, I can't stand her, I can't stand the relationship. I mean, I love her, but it's just horrible. It's not working, And so, what is it you miss, right?
Right.
Is it her, or is it intimacy? Is it the feeling of closeness, or is it her?
Or that it's easy.
You know, and when you get to the bottom of that, it's like, no, it's the feeling of tenderness, you know, and that has a slightly different flavor with every other individual.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the same essential thing, right? It's just the same, even when you see two animals, like two lions in the Serengeti, like this feeling of tenderness is really more than the person, which is why, you know, this sensibility written into all our poetry that love goes on. Like it goes on. Like you can find it again, you know. You can find it again if you're healthy, you know, if you want to.
If you're healthy. Okay, good that you said that. If you're healthy.
That's
but
right,
a lot of us.
That's right. But there's no pressure to.
No. But
and if you don't find it, it doesn't mean you're not healthy.
No.
Right?
Well,
It's
I mean,
okay.
Isn't it a sign of not being quite healthy if you can't connect on a certain basic level? I mean, I love that you brought up the couple angle, because I think I told you that I wanted to also ask you about the attachments we form with people, and is it detaching too soon just as traumatic, if not potentially more traumatic than staying with this person, whoever it may be, whether it's toxic in itself or not. So again, the coping, because I mean, you can easily be addicted to a person as you can be to a substance, right? And I, just the way you explain now, the people like me don't understand that yet. Those nuances to how, like, to walk yourself through that whole analytical journey before you reach from point A to point B about something, whether it's the funeral and you're trying to understand what it is about this person that's making you frozen in that moment, and you're trying to mourn them, but you don't know quite how to. Or you trying to respond with an emotional, you're trying to feel something about it, but it's not, your body quite literally doesn't let you until you alter your brain chemistry to a degree. So I'm trying to understand when the guy was saying, I don't like her, or she sucks, or whatever it is. When you talk to these people about a connection and love, how do you walk them through analyzing themselves to the point where they understand what exactly it is that they want? Mm-hmm. Because we don't know what we want. Us as addicts, well, no, that's a lie. We want to just feel something. That's true. We want to not feel we either don't want to feel miserable, right? Or we want to feel anything at all. And people that use substances for that, like I used to, it was helpful to me. I can't tell you that it wasn't. So I did not have the tools that you just spoke about, where you can analyze yourself or look at yourself. There's nothing there. That's the problem. So,
you know, I think it starts for sure not with analyzing.
Right. So where does it start?
You know, not, in other words, coming from here, but like trying to feel, right, into here. Saying it's okay, like, what am I feeling in the nervous system? Like, what do I want to feel in the nervous system, right? And I mean, you know, taking just one thing at a time, right? And you were saying when a couple is in a relationship and then they split, and you're saying cutting off really quickly. Is that where you were?
Yeah, we can talk about
that
for sure, because 100%. There are situations where cutting off, I think, let me explain that. I think that there are times that people will have more trauma from detaching because they don't have the tools. Same as suddenly quitting alcohol. A severe alcoholic suddenly stopping alcohol could actually kill them. Withdrawal could kill them because we don't have the tools to cope with everything in between.
What are you drinking right now?
I'm just kidding. This is tea. A cup.
Straight tequila right here.
I know. Can you imagine?
You know, in the ending of a relationship, right, and I think that oftentimes couples will look to like pop culture and radio saying this is what you ought to do, right? And it's different for every single individual. And so I think a lot of those shows get a lot of fast clicks, but they're really, really horrible advice. You know, that's right for a few people and probably terrible for most. Because it's about experiencing what's happening within. Like, so, for example, if a couple is going through a split, right, it's less about what to do. Like, you want to figure out a roadmap, but the roadmap is derivative of what you feel inside, you know, what you're capable of inside. So it's more about reframing. I was just speaking with this gentleman, young guy, earlier today, and he was having a really tough time in the relationship, and she's, you know, quite a bit older than him, and they had at some point a great relationship, and now there's been a lot of dependence built in the relationship, and he loves her, but he needs to let go, right? He knows that he needs to let go on a number of different levels. And so it's more like he's like, and he was using like a lot of cussing when he was discussing the relationship. And I said, listen, the space to hold this is just to love this girl, especially in the letting go. To just be so grateful for what this relationship has been. And to say, like, I want a break. I need a break here. Not because I dislike you, not because of any of the things you're doing. I just need to let this go because I don't like the way I'm experiencing life and myself during this. I'm not breaking up because I dislike you. I'm breaking up because I love you and I'm so grateful for this. And I know I can't carry this right now. Because that's the deepest level of truth, right? Because I can't carry this means I'm responsible and I'm taking responsibility for my participation in this because both people are responsible. If you want to take responsibility on your behalf, that's up to you. But I don't want to bring up your responsibilities, And I think that initially couples come into a relationship, or see a therapist, or see some in psychology, or go to some sort of immersive experience because they want the other person to be fixed.
Run the whole thing. Oh, okay.
Or their eyes opened up to something. And it's like in general, it's better to work one-on-one. With one individual
instead
and the
of
other.
couples?
And once in a while see them together.
Okay.
Right? And I've done that. But to see them one-on-one because the mission for each individual is very different. Right? It's very
Absolutely.
The triggers are going to be different.
And they might be more transparent about things if they're not. Do you not think?
It's not about transparency so much. I mean, most of it's more about saying, hey, let's look into this. What's happening there?
Yeah.
What's happening there? Let's go into that. And then somebody can say, oh my God, wow, this has nothing to do with her or him. Oh, my Lord, I need to let this up. I just realized this just reminds me of my mother or my father or this experience I had with my ex. Not that, and sure, there's a level of transparency there. They might not want to offend, the other,
person
but they maybe never thought about it, maybe never felt it and associated it with those responses, those triggers,
Do you find that sometimes people come in not aware that they're being dishonest? Do you know what I mean? That they're so used to hiding in the layers that they're used to showing, the faces that they're used to showing people, that you would have to bring it to light to them that you're actually just not telling me anything. Has that ever happened? I think
it's happening all the time, in so much as you think about, whoever's listening to this, right? Like, who's the boy or girl that you had a crush on in 5th grade? Well, like, did that work out? Like, yeah, it did. It worked out.
It could have worked out. It was very beautiful.
But what does work out mean and not work out? Like, work out mean it worked out perfectly for a week or a month or a day or whatever the thing was.
Oh, right? What is working out?
Right, exactly. In other words, to answer the question, what was your relationship, in high school? Right? If you're not still in that relationship, what was that relationship? Right? Like, aren't you happy that didn't work out? Like, or that it worked out for as long as it did, in other words, and it ended, right? So, in other words, when you say, like, showing your faces, right? And this is the crux. Yeah. This is really the value here, right? It comes down to what's the purpose of relationship, right? That's the big, deeper question. And the purpose of relationship is to catalyze the beauty of the human experience and get to know myself through the other and to allow the other to get to know him or herself through me, right? So we're in a relationship. I get to know you, but I also get to know me through you. So that requires courage and vulnerability on my side and courage and vulnerability on your side. So that's a never-ending story. So, of course, when you show up in a relationship, also the first stage of love is romantic.
This all sounds terrifying to me, by the way.
It is terrifying love. Yeah. That's right. That's an appropriate response. Look, all of our fairy tales are based on the first stage of love. 5 stages of love that I've identified. I agree. Which is romantic love, which is just a projection. You see a picture of somebody, or you see someone, and you have this idea, of who he or she is. Or should be, or an idea of how they should be. No, I'm saying they have this idea. Yeah,
exactly. Thank you. Yes,
what
correct.
You hope them to
what
be,
I think
what
they
you
should
want, what you
and when they don't play the role, you get very angry. When they're just
that's
being
a problem.
human.
You should get angry, yeah.
No, I'm saying, well, I do. Me too, probably. But I'm just saying, don't you agree that in general, people tend to cast this person that they're going to be in a certain role based off of what society says a relationship should be, or how for example, I feel that way about monogamy, that it's great, but it's a discipline. It's a very serious and intentional daily discipline that I think is against our natural way of being. Do you know what I mean? So it's when people enter it so carelessly and so casually, expecting it to be easy, I get really surprised, shocked even, And immediately they're cosplaying husband and wife. And I'm like, what are you doing? Do you see nothing that person's not remotely interested in that kind of discipline? But, you know, it trips me out how much people are scared to be alone to the point where they'll impose this delusion onto the other person, and they want the friends to play along often, most of the time, because, you know, just like on cue, when the breakup happens and all the friends are expected to hate this person now that you've just insisted we should love in the first place. But you told us to love him and now we have to hate him.
This is not a very good friend group.
No. It's the way people tell me. It's not the general beat of things. Even in the healthier, isn't it true that, don't you agree that after a breakup, let's say this is a very healthy group, after a breakup, I always knew he wasn't that good for you. Don't you hear that a lot? Or I knew she wasn't good for you. I knew she wasn't the one for you. Okay, if you knew, why didn't you say something? We play along.
The one.
We play along.
How was the boy or girl you had a crush on in 5th grade?
Yeah.
That was the one.
At the time. And the friends played along, okay, I tell you.
Let me get into that. Who's the one? The one, I'm going to tell you right now who the one is, right? The one is God. Right? I mean, and you know, and I don't mean that in a monotheistic way. Spirit, the cosmos, like it's
your higher power.
Not yours, but the catalytic experience of this existence that you're locating, having this spiritual experience through another individual, that you're looking in the eyes, you know, you're having an experience of transcendent love, that you're looking at your lover and you're having this experience of spirit or God through your lover, and you're like, I'm in awe, so that even if he or she is upset with me, like, all right, I don't like that, what she's doing right now, that's horrible. But I'm so grateful to have this experience either way. It's like so spectacular. I don't know if I can tolerate this much longer, but this is an amazing experience, right? And the amazing thing about the transcendent stage of love, right? The 5th stage of love. This is through a study that I did for 20 years, right? And my TED Talk's on that, on 5 stages of love. That the phenomenon that we are experiencing is then that primes us to experience transcendent love with all other beings. In other words, then you start to have it like with your pet, with your dog or your cat, right? And you look in your dog's eyes and you're like, oh my God, I'm seeing something here that's bigger than my dog or my cat. In the stranger on the street, right? In your colleagues, right? With you and I right now. Like you start to have an experience that is the other, but what Martin Buber terms as the I-thou relationship, that you're having an experience with consciousness itself, with God, you know, through the other, right? And so I think about like saying, well, the one is not just the other person, but that's me too, right? It's the experience that part of the, you know, on the way to the one is the experience of us that transcends and includes the other and myself, right? In other words, the first stage of love is romantic, it's all projection. Yeah. The second stage of love is passionate, where we say, okay, I like this person and I'm attracted to them, but passion is evolutionary love, which is, okay, I want to mate with this person. You know, I want to be around this person, right? It's chemical, right? It's beautiful, right? It's fantastic, right? But even the root of that, the Latin root of passion is passio, which means to suffer, right? And so all of our love songs, right, a lot of our music is written about the second stage of love, which is amazing. You can't skip stages, right? You got to go. And then the third.
Although people try to.
Yeah, all the time, right? But then the third stage of love, right, is courageous love. When you say, okay, there's someone else here. They're very different from me. Right. We're going to bump elbows sometimes. This is going to be challenging. But you know what? There's something about me that I like that I'm not doing when I'm not with this person, that I am doing when I am with this person, that's becoming more, and it's worth it. In other words, I'm going to endure some of the discomfort because I want to let go of some of these parts of myself to become more in this relationship, right? Okay. And then you get to the selfless stage of love, right? Right. Which is really where you say, okay, there's an us here. Right. That's bigger than me and bigger than the other, that hierarchically is more important sometimes than my hopes and desires and he or she's hopes and desires, that I'm going to let go of parts of myself to be part of this us.
I love where this interview is going because it's not remotely what I thought it would be, but we're going to just go with it because I have strong opinions about this stuff. So I love everything you said. I think it's a discipline, though. I think that it's not for everybody. I think the concept of love is mental illness. I don't think that it's, if you don't have the tools to understand, here's what I mean by that. If you imprint and fall in love with the wrong person, The wrong person, what is the wrong person? The wrong person is somebody who encourages you to give up your goals, to give up what matters to you. It's a selfish love. It's somebody who encourages selfish love. And at the worst of it, puts you through hell because they know that you love them. So whatever love chemically does to your brain, from what I've seen and from my own experience, is incredibly dangerous. And I don't think it's for everybody. I don't think, for me, love is somebody who understands what makes you feel good about yourself. Meaning, let's give a basic example. If there's a person who's willing to, she's like, I'm so in love with you, I'm going to give up everything that I've ever worked for. She's like a corporate chick or something, let's say, right? It's super savvy. She could do wonders for the world. But, now she's fallen in love and now we're going to get married and have children. And he's well off. He can pay for your life. It's fine. You don't have to do anything. But the core of her, right? What makes her uniquely her is that she's always been infinitely curious, let's say. She's a problem solver. She's, you know what I mean? She loves to fix things and invent things. And if you encourage her and you let her go, she could do great things for the world. But no, you'd like her to be a housewife. This is psychotic to me. I've seen it happen to so many of my friends that are incredibly smart, super, just the most incredible women. And then they fall in love. And then it's like everything that they could have done for the world and everything they could have done for themselves and the people they could have become just gets put aside. For what? So you can mate and have children? That's it? You could do that too, by the way. You could have a surrogate. I don't mean to take the romance out of something. I love the idea of, like, I'm actually quite conservative, if people could believe that, being married and having kids and all these things. I think it's beautiful. But what I don't love is that the concept of love makes somebody surrender. It's very dangerous in that people just go into it making people sacrifice what the core of them is. And no, you're not the core of them. Meeting you is not the highlight of their life. It's not. It's just not. You can't be that special, but you could if you let them become of service. I think the core of somebody is to be of service. All of us is to be of service to others.
And I think what you're speaking about there, though, is less about love and more about conscious coupling. Right, that it's
maybe.
Saying
Tell me what
getting involved in someone not just because of the physical attraction. That's definitely
don't get me started on those.
Right, I mean that's definitely
infuriating.
It's an amazing thing to have chemistry with someone, right? But it's not a good way to plan one's life. Right, it doesn't go well most of the time.
It's a psychosis.
It's a wonderful thing to experience, right? And if that's the gateway, right, to the next stage of love. The idea is to navigate that in a way to say, okay, all right, I'm super attracted. Now all of a sudden we're hitting a block here, right? About control or about avoidance or about whatever the experience is.
That the tools you may not. Right? Yeah, sure.
And so, okay, and it, that an individual in the relationship, both of them can say, okay, I'm experiencing this in this relationship because I'm, as you were citing the woman there, super curious and I want to go out and fix things and do things, right? But I want to be with you. So instead of to say, this is what I want, this is what I need, right? It's to say, I must have that.
Instead of advocating for yourself.
Is there a world where this relationship, we can keep experiencing this passion and I can also be curious and go out and fix things in the world? So then he, in this case, in the analogy used, can say, no, that's not for me. Okay. Fine, I miss you. This is incredibly, it's got to end. Or he can say, you know what? I've never thought about that before. Maybe that works. Yeah, let's try it out. And that's really about conscious coupling. In other words, it's saying, okay, the addiction, in this case to sex, right? In this case to the chemistry even, right? Even more than the sex, just the chemical of being together, right? And that
fear of being alone.
The camaraderie also, and the intimacy and companionship, right?
Sure.
Saying, okay, that feels really great, but I don't want that to come at a higher price than my own becoming. In other words, my own self-actualization, my own being able to ask myself, what is the world asking of me today?
I don't think that's the thing with people, though.
Well, it's rare, yeah, of course.
No, I'm saying I'm so sorry to interrupt you. You're right, what you're saying. People don't they don't put that on the table. Themselves and their own development as an individual is not in the equation.
When I think it's
which is terrible.
It's interesting, right? Because sure, it's not so common, but it's becoming more common.
In other words,
you look at the arc, right? There's a lot of really awful psychology online today,
yeah.
But at least it demonstrates an interest that people are seeking out personal development and depth connection and courage. And I just think it's wonderful, your show, what you're doing. And I'm honored to be here today
I'm honored
to discuss
this,
right? You. Because this is powerful. And even, when I spoke at the Institute for Neuroinnovation,
at the Huntley,
10 years ago, they wouldn't have had me deliver a keynote about consciousness. But today,
not true. They weren't into. Okay.
Because in the world of neuroscience, consciousness is not.
Oh, okay.
The word
I
conscious
see.
is not a term. It's not something I use. But now, and then
people loved
Randy
your
Sherlocker, who gave the keynote after me,
yes,
gave a very comparable keynote to mine. Right? He talked about the universe is conscious, and
yes.
I talked about consciousness, the relationship between
yes.
consciousness and the manifest world of reality. Right?
Yep.
And so I think in that same way, people are curious and want to know, about. Tony Robbins is more popular, and there are a lot of people who are emulating him or facsimiling him, who I don't think are so good. Whereas I think Tony's outstanding. I think he's fantastic. And the first time I met him, I was like, wow, he's amazing. And he walks the talk also. Like, he's got an amazing relationship with his wife, and he's an incredible father and all those things, Whereas I think that, a lot of people are trying to sell something as opposed to give something. Yeah, and I think it's important to be able to differentiate that as it is in relationship. Because I think, the value, 20 years ago, there's only a few channels to find this kind of content on. Now, This content's proliferating because people are more and more interested because they're saying, look, I'm going around and maybe I'm finding success, or maybe I'm finding athletics, or maybe I'm finding, this, that, or friendships, or this, that. But man, my relationship with my lover is hard.
Yeah.
So I better get to the bottom of this. I'm going to go on YouTube and figure this thing out, right?
Right.
And there's so much garbage out there, right? But there's some wonderful, wonderful clues out there, wonderful, wonderful things. And so for me, it's important to show up in the world as a voice to say, there is a work ethic and a discipline and an integrity that is required. But if you have that, whoa.
Well, that's discipline again.
Relationship becomes amazing. I mean, I've had amazing relationships.
Well, I imagine you would, because
but they've all been challenging.
You ask the right questions, and I, you know what? If anything, who knows what the right questions are? But at least you're willing to look, and you're not afraid of the information, and that's amazing. On top of that, you now provide information because you've done so much work on yourself and want people to do better. And I agree. That's service. That's being of service. And I think anytime you're doing that, you're going to continue to elevate. But in regards to people and being willing to look, maybe that's what I'm saying, that people are oftentimes afraid to look what the answer might be. And so maybe that's, again, why I would probably lean on alcohol until it releases me to, oh, now you can look, now you can see. Same thing with relationships. People who have people that are terrified to be alone enter relationships and then cosplay something that is built on discipline, a monogamous relationship on top of everything. You're not even being like polyamorous or something that has a little bit of freedom. No, you want the really intense thing where it's, I'm only thinking about you and I'm only going to do right by you. There's no lying. We share a life and all these things. Why would you do that? If you haven't looked at yourself at all, if you're not willing to see the truth about yourself or the other person, but no, you want the hardest form of a relationship, that's insane to me. And it's based off of fear. A lot of the times I think it's based off fear. And I think people prefer the traps that they think they understand rather than what could come from just being intensely honest with themselves about what they're built for, relationship-wise, or what they can give to the world.
I would agree with that. That being truthful and honest at the moment is the only way to arrive to a deeper level of truth and honesty in the next moment.
Yeah.
To say right now I'm capable of this is what allows me to moments later, a day, a month, a year, 5 years, 10 years, whatever, to arrive to this or deeper, whatever, to a deeper stage, in other words. Yes, absolutely.
Oh, what makes me crazy is the lie. If there's any lying involved, the dishonesty, it does something really, really intensely scary to me. Like, it unravels me in such a deep way. They tell you in AA to not get into a relationship in the first first year that you're pursuing sobriety, because your emotional state is just haywire if something goes wrong there. Why is that? I think it's because the first, it's promoted so heavily that by this age you need to be married, by this age you need to have children, or what, or you were a failure, or you have not completed your social contract with the world or something. Either way, if you're not capable of those things because of X, Y, and Z that happened when you were a child, the first thing you should probably do is look at that before you're try to bring someone else into your orbit or try to be in somebody else's orbit. And once you are in somebody's orbit, I think someone's responsibility should be, in whatever capacity it is, okay, you are now my person. I can see that if it's us, I see that you love to think. I see that you love to help people. I would never try to suspend that in you. I would never try to take that away from you. Even if you're like, you know what, Haley, this is it. This is you and me now. I've found you. Fuck the world. Let's go away somewhere and it'll be you and I together forever. I'll be depriving the world of something huge because people need help untangling things, and people like you help them untangle that. That's a responsibility. The social contract isn't to marry me and have a child with me and procreate with me. You could do that with anybody. It's really not that special or that unique. It's really not. Being attracted to somebody is not that special or unique to the two of us or whoever else. It's not. That's not special. I think what makes it special when you are in a relationship, for me, the idea of a relationship is okay, I can see that you're doing something huge for people, and you should keep doing that. You should keep doing that, and I want to find ways to help you keep doing that, and then you do the same for me. Not let's be together and fuck until what is that? It's the most boring thing I've ever heard, and psychotic. That's why I think it's a mental illness. People really think it makes sense. We're so obsessed with each other. You sound crazy.
It relates, to the theme, strongly of addiction, that people get
addicted to
lost
each other
in just the primal stage of attraction, right? And that's okay, but it's got a short fuse. And if you look in popular culture, even today, right, you can reference a ton of relationships that are founded on that passionate stage, and then you think, wow, I bet he wishes he wouldn't have married her.
Right.
Or I bet she wishes that, whoa, that didn't.
Right.
Oof. And so what's the lesson? It's not that he's bad or she's bad. They both signed up for it.
Yeah.
Right. But they rooted in the foundation, as you're articulating here, I think really well. The foundation of the relationship was based on just sex, right? And so that becomes a dangerous thing. Sex is powerful, and it's an amazing form of nonverbal communication.
Sure.
That can allow people to express courage and vulnerability, and control and surrender, in a way when they might not have the words for that, and so it becomes a form of intimacy that is profound, that can be profound. And I think you alluded to something that's, I think, also very powerful, talking about the relationship with addiction and the relationship with overcoming that stage of like having a relationship founded on just passion, right? Mm-hmm. And celibacy. I think that celibacy is important for someone to experience at any point in life. Like, because it says, okay, if I'm going to say, look, I'm going to be attracted, I want to kiss, but I'm not going to have sex, right, for an extended period, whatever that is, right? And to say, wow, well, if I take that out of the equation,
now
all
what?
of a sudden it changes everything. I meet a man or a woman, I say, listen, I like you, I really like you, but I'm not going to have sex until next year or whatever the thing is.
Now what?
And if that person's still interested, then it's whoa, then all of a sudden, also that person might be challenged by that, and they might say, you know what, okay too. In other words, they're now entering a deeper stage because of you. Right?
Yes.
And I've had that experience, a lot in my life. I've been very lucky, right? I've been very lucky, no doubt. And I, grew up part-time. I'm from England. I grew up part-time in Hawaii.
I didn't know that. I read that and I was like,
I'm British
okay.
I'm a British passport, and I used to have a British accent when I was a kid, and some of the words still. But we moved to Hawaii when I was a kid, and my father was a professor and an author. And it was sort of like Hawaii, everywhere in the world, there's a bunch of planes landing. Okay. And there are people who are on vacation for 5 days, and they're in their swimsuits all day long, and everyone's half naked, and it's beautiful all day, and every day is Saturday.
Yeah.
And so it's a super ultra charged aphrodisiac, right? Being in this tropical place, And so because of that, I think it was a wonderful experience for me as a boy, because I just felt like, wow, sex is available.
Yeah.
So then at some juncture, I was kind of like, wow, as a man, and before I came to California, I was like, sex is a liability. That was how I observed it when I came here. I saw a lot of people who were very talented and who could do anything probably, but they were wasting their time just chasing men or women. And I said, well, you cut that out, and you cut out news, and you cut out just watching a bunch of whatever sports on TV nonstop. You cut out a number of things. Pretty soon, all of a sudden, you got this brand new life that you can actually construct something with, and forge relationships that are conscious. You're saying, I want to be more like this person. I'm going to bring this person into my life. And so I think that my evaluation, for my own self, in terms of my own journey, right, sexually is kind of well, all right, I see a lot of pain involved there, and then I also see well, men and women are both targets, and I thought, well, when I came to California, I thought, okay, this is dangerous. I'm not going to connect with anyone, and
because it's casual. Is that why?
Just because I thought, well, I'm not in a rush. You know what I mean? If you want to hang out, and if you want to hang out this week and next month and in 2 months, well, then we can have sex then. And if we can't wait that long, then well, all right, you don't want to be with me enough that it turns me on.
Well, they do, but they just want to have a physical bond with you, right?
Sure, that's fine, but I'm not for me. I'm comfortable waiting. In other
same.
Words, the durability.
What a gift.
And I mean, in other words, the offering there, right?
Yeah.
This isn't my indulgence here into that, but the offering there is to say, if somebody can wait and say, look, I like you so much, right?
Yeah.
And the experience I've had,
it doesn't have to be the center of it. Yeah.
Saying, okay, look, I'd love you to come over to my place. And I'd love to hang out, but we're not going to have sex. I just want you to know that. What that does also for, I think, particularly coming from a man, what that does for a woman is it makes a woman feel like, oh my God, even if she's attracted to the man, it makes him feel like, oh my God, wow.
Probably throws her off in this
but also,
day and age.
But also it's oh my God, you know what? I'm going to have to sit inside of me and embody me and experience these other things about me around him that aren't about sex. And it makes it even more than enjoyable when it does happen. It makes a woman feel like, well, I'm being seen as a woman.
Yeah.
Not just
those people should maybe consider a more serious. Those are people more equipped to consider a more serious relationship. Other people that can't take that kind of thinking and apply it to a connection and just casually enter marriage make me crazy. They make me crazy.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about
no,
what they do.
I've not gone to a wedding because of that. I'm you guys no, and I was right. I was right. This is for sure not what I thought this interview was going to be, but I mean, I love. Yeah, no, it was great. It was the analytical aspect of of relationships, which I was planning on doing an episode on anyway, but I didn't think I was doing it now. But this was, I love what you had to say, and I got to also express my frustrations with.
But I think also, the top of the, at the top of the interview, you're relating sex, right, on a number of occasions here, and passion to addiction, right, and I think there's a great correlation there, right, and the correlation is this. Right, that it's saying, let's just have sex because I'm afraid
of everything in
to
between.
Go deeper with you. I'm afraid there's other communication that I don't know how to have with my mind or my heart, and so I only know how to communicate with you through sex. Yeah. And so let's just do that.
Because it's easy. This is just easier to do it that way, and it feels good.
So to say okay, wait a second. Let's try to have sex right now, but without the physical part.
Yeah.
What is it you want to show me?
Let's be intimate with
what
how.
What does he want to tell me? Let's be really, really vulnerable and really, really, really courageous. Yeah. Then you start to say, that's a challenge, It's a play.
And a good one.
And sometimes it's not. Sometimes it also has to be transferable, You have to
I agree.
Act it out or play it out,
I agree.
And so that's an exercise that I might do with a couple to say,
just hang out?
Yeah, what is it?
And not touch each other?
What's at the root of the thing?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. That's kind of a great way to
And that dovetails back into the experience of saying, what is the state experience that I have, in this case for you, around your aunt?
Yeah. Yeah.
That is, who am I enjoying about myself when I'm with this person?
Yeah.
How can I get more in touch with that? Even if Like my grandmother, I have that experience. I love my grandmother. She's wonderful, and she lives on through me. You know, she died, 2 years ago, and she lives on through me. Like I have this very spiritual experience of her.
Yeah.
You know, and I think, well, what is it that I love about her? I love the experience of her and all those particular things about her, but I also love who I am when I'm with her. And so if I can emulate that in my daily life, then she lives on through me. That's a transcendent, that's a
really
dynamic
beautiful.
An expression of transcendent love here and now.
That's so beautiful. Yeah, I didn't think of those things at all when I perceived death. I think, like you addressed it, I got very robotic, and the feelings would hide somewhere that I couldn't really reach them unless I helped them come out, I guess. So, yeah, very, very interesting, unexpected conversation with you today. And I love those. Yeah. I learned a lot, and I always do when I listen to I actually listen to your videos a lot, by the way.
But thank you.
I'm a fan.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you for being a part of my journey. And for anyone listening, I guess this episode was about love and sex and how you manage all those things in between. This was Sebastian Siegel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Done. We're burning up in here.
That was great. That was wonderful.
No, I loved it. It's like it flowed into its